o'clock. So let's call this meeting to order.
Yep.
And let me begin by stating that this meeting of the Grafton Planning Board is being conducted. I'm looking at the old. I thought I had it. Oh, I know. Let me just bring up the appropriate meeting script here. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Grafton Planning Board is being conducted with both in-person and remote participation by board members and members of the public. Remote participation by the public for the public input agenda item and any agenda items where someone else is participating will be via the Zoom Q&A chat or raise hand feature. And we did ask the participants make sure that we know their correct name and address and affiliation as appropriate. Every vote, because we have board members participating remotely, will be taken by roll call. And please note that the meeting is being recorded as well as being broadcast live on the Grafton Community Television Government Channel. So, having said that, I will call the roll of board members and participants so that we know that everybody is here and can be heard. Justin Wood.
I am here.
Bob Hassinger.
Present.
Linda Hassinger.
Here.
Prabhu Venkatraman.
Present.
And we have here representing the applicants for agenda item 2A, Jean Christie from Ty and Bond, and I'm blanking on the name, Matt Welter from O'Connell Development.
Yes, here. Thank you.
And we have staff present, Chris McGoldrick, our town planner.
Present.
And with that, our first agenda item, as always, is public input. If there happens to be a member of the public attending this meeting that wishes to speak to an item that's not currently on the agenda, now would be the time to do that.
Dave, should you also call yourself out to be present?
I'm sorry?
You typically call everyone and then say, I am Dave Roberts, I'm here.
I suppose I should admit that I'm here. Just for the sake of completeness. Okay, so seeing no public input, proceed to our action items 2A, which is the decision approval for plan approval, PA 2021-01 at 8 Pine Street, GSX-ODG GLLC / Town of Grafton applicant / owner. So we closed this hearing, and we have an updated draft decision. Preliminary draft decision was available at our meeting last week, but the preliminary format of that, along with materials that had been just submitted to the board late that day, suggested that we take time to review the application materials and have staff work on completing the decision, all of which has been done. And we now have an updated draft decision before us for consideration. And with that, Chris, do you have anything that you want to discuss initially with respect to that?
Yeah, I did just want to bring to the board's attention, given some of the input from the peer review consultants, I did make some very minor adjustments, and I just wanted to call those out for everyone's attention. Let me just pull them up. I changed some references to subdivision to plan approval. And then condition C6, typically with subdivision approvals or site plan, the board puts a 2-year completion schedule. At the request of the developer, we're looking to extend that to 36 months or 3 years. I did review the section 13.7C of the zoning bylaw, the section which enforces that typical 2-year for a special permit or a subdivision. But since this is a plan approval, that does not typically apply, so the board has a discretion of what they find sufficient for a period of validity.
Yeah, just a kind of a nitpick on that.
Mhm.
13.7C is it's under the application for Brown, but 13.7.C lists the required submittals. It doesn't seem to talk about it, time periods or extensions. So I'm not quite sure what your intent was at, or
There is a place where it says, where we say 2 years for special permits.
Yeah,
This
no,
isn't a special permit, is it?
right. It's that section. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's the period of validity is the term. I don't know if you're able to do a control find for period of validity. It should pop up. But I believe the section reference for that was intended to be for that it would be a minor modification that in order to extend the period of validity in such a case that we were moving beyond it, it would be a minor modification, which is
I see it in the definitions 1.5.8.
yeah, 1.5.8 is period of validity for major residential special permits. See, I think it's just, it's a small thing, but I don't see anything in the bylaw that specifically discusses extensions or periods of validity for the North Grafton Transit Village Overlay District plan approval. It's not to say that we don't have, it's just that we don't have a good ZBL reference to tie that to.
correct. I believe the board could put that condition in. They could remove the condition altogether. It's at their
Yep.
discretion.
Yeah, so my thinking on that particular point was, we don't need to reference zoning bylaw section, but we certainly, it's within, to the best of my knowledge, it's within our power to put the condition in as written, that, we say this is valid for 3 years and the board can extend it.
Okay.
So, we don't have a neat little ZBL paragraph or, to refer to that, but that doesn't mean we can't condition it anyway. So my only quibble is with that specific reference.
Yeah, so I'll remove the section 13.7C reference and then instead put the referenced minor modification approval that the board can extend the period of validity
Right.
via that process. So
Yeah,
I think I just recently saw a section, I don't know whether it was actually in our ZBL or whether it was a proposal someplace, but it actually outlined, maybe it's in stuff that you've been working on, Dave. If the request for an extension comes during the period of validity, it can be a minor modification. Otherwise, if they miss, then it's, but that's special permit, I think.
I suppose if you wanted a reference into the ZBL for this particular plan approval, we could look at section 13.15, which is change in plans after approval. So 13.15A in particular talks about minor changes, although it doesn't specifically include extensions of time as a minor change, but arguably that does give us a general authority to deal with changes after the plan has been approved. That's probably an adequate reference for authority for the time period and the extension.
Actually, is there anything in this section of the bylaw about minor or major changes?
Yeah, that's section 13.15 I'm referencing. 13.15A is minor change, a nice long paragraph about dealing with minor changes. 1315B is major changes which have to be approved, processed as a new application for plan approval. So that's where we get the authority to deal with minor and major changes for the plan.
I think what was there about just 3 years, and when the 3 years are up, if we need to do something, we'll do it.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's sufficient for our purposes and the applicant's purposes that we include the condition as written with a more appropriate reference into the ZBL, specifying again the
I'm not sure
time
you
period.
have-
We're not. I don't think we're not quibbling about how long it should be. 3 years strikes me as being very reasonable for this project. We're not questioning the ability of the board to extend that time period should the need arise.
But, I don't think you have a ZBL reference specifically, do you?
Yes, it'd be 1315 for a 13.15A for a minor modification. But there's no specific ZBL reference that requires the board to put a period of validity.
No, nor is there explicit authority to extend it.
Correct.
But if the ZBL doesn't even address a period of validity, it's not going to address the extension of something like that.
Maybe you can put in there, and the applicant or the developer may apply for an extension from the board if needed.
Yep, I think there's no real difficulty with that other than just, here we're basically, picking at nits and making sure that we've got, we got that the wording says what we all understand that we want it to say.
Yeah, we gotta have enough to do tonight, so it was worth coming.
Yeah. So with that said, Chris was in the middle of itemizing the changes he's made to the draft decision.
So the other adjustment, pardon my scrolling. I changed in references to endorsed plans. Again, that was another subdivision term that snuck its way in here. Those references were changed to final approved plans, which is in alignment with the board's typical processing of plans after approval. A final plan set is submitted to the planning department with any of the changes that are required by the decision.
Yeah, I'll just sort of comment at this point that we're breaking new ground here in the sense that we've never done a plan approval like this before. This is the first, and there's really only one other place in town currently where that's likely to happen, and there's nothing really on the horizon yet for that. So this is a brand new process for us.
So then this condition 29 was added. This was out of the comments by Graves Engineering peer review and their final letter. I believe it's comment letter 3, that prior to the issuance of occupancy permits, final inspection by the fire department will be conducted to ensure that the proposed reinforced turf access way is adequate. The town reserves the right to require additional modifications to address access deficiencies in the event that site conditions may warrant. The applicant developer shall be responsible for submitting a final approval from the fire department that the access way has been installed to their satisfaction. And then the last condition that I added was out of the MDM peer review letter, looking at transportation demand management. They deferred to the town's transportation demand management policy, which in this case, being our first project, we have no established policy. What I did for that was form some language that I think will get us at least some start to a policy that we can then formalize later. But what I considered for that is prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, applicant, in coordination with the Grafton Planning Department, shall develop a site-specific transportation demand management program to formalize at a minimum. And I picked the items from our discussions throughout the meeting that I felt were relevant. So the overflow parking availability for MBTA use, the sidewalk snow clearing along Pine Street to MBTA train station, evaluation of potential school bus pickup and drop-off locations, and then advertising and outreach of TDM opportunities to prospective businesses and residential tenants. So I think this has already been discussed and is on record through the meeting recordings and minutes, but this will be something that we'll put together a document in coordination with the developer that memorializes those discussions that were had and commitments made. So
With some of this kind of thing, will include satisfactory to the board. The board gets to have a say or a look at and okay. You know what I mean? In other kinds of conditions, we'll sometimes have that.
yeah, so I can add I think what we could do is at the end of to formalize at a minimum and it goes through, I'll add a condition C34 saying that the TDM program, once finalized, will be submitted to the board for their review and approval.
Sounds good.
So a couple of other points that I noticed in reviewing this. One is recall that the applicant was going to prepare a complete plan set incorporating all the changes in the park. We've seen some updated plan sheets, and I think condition 17 probably covers that, the receipt of such a plan. So I don't think we need to say anything more about that. Condition 17 anticipates that we will get that plan.
Yeah.
Condition 30, I think, I remember there was some discussion about, the I forget what it was called, the rapid flashing, the pedestrian signs, that was to be dealt with, basically worked with our DPW, and I think condition 30 covers that. In the category of safety signage and markings.
Correct.
So I think that's adequately covered. One other thing I noticed, sort of rereading the peer reviews and the applicant's response to peer review was some discussion of subsurface evaluation, where there was the applicant had limited ability to do that as they don't yet own the property. And I think I got the sense from reading all that the as construction begins, applicant will be doing more of that. This is part of the construction process, and that may lead to some drainage design changes. But I think Graves indicated that there was the potential for some flexibility there, and I think in the end what that means. Graves at one point in their discussion did talk about adding some conditions to the decision regarding some additional subsurface evaluation. I'm thinking probably there's nothing explicitly in the conditions now about that, but during the course of their work, the applicant may discover, due to some unanticipated subsurface conditions, that there may be some changes in drainage design that would be warranted. Graves did talk about there being some flexibility in drainage design. So I think where I end up thinking about that is, to me at least, if as the work begins they find that they need to change the drainage design, that would come back to us in the form of a modification to the plans, which we would then evaluate as being either minor or major. So I think that territory is covered in the decision as written.
Yes, I believe. Let me just. One of the standard conditions is
I think it was
typically.
condition 4.
Yeah, we have a standard condition that deals with modifications to the plans.
I was thinking 4 as in the.
Yeah, so the, condition 4 is this plan approval shall not be construed as final approval of any on-site, off-site improvements or work such as water, sewer, drainage, or other utilities installation associated with this project and shown on plans. All applicable federal, state, local approvals, permits obtained, and the applicant, prior to the construction of any portion of the development or off-site improvements that warrant such approvals. And so that's, yeah, I think that,
And then there's the catch-all condition too, which
Yeah.
covers, any and all plan modifications.
correct.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and I did discuss that with the applicant, that we have the minor modification process, which is typically a public hearing for the board to determine whether or not, a full modification is required, so.
Yeah, I think, just in general for plan modifications, we've got that pretty well covered. In our standard conditions and that section of the ZBL we talked about earlier that, goes into at some length to explain the processing of minor major modifications. Any other
I-
thoughts and comments from the board?
I tried to find grammar errors like you did for some of our other decisions last meeting, and I didn't actually notice any.
I've been trying to get better about that.
Yes,
Can Word,
I
Word
usually-
look for that?
I usually, but not always, notice things like that. And no, I did not see anything like that. Any other thoughts and comments? It seems like maybe a motion would be in order.
I move that we make the findings, and do we have any waivers?
There is
There
one
is,
waiver.
yeah, one
And
waiver.
grant the waivers as presented in the revised draft decision, and approve it.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board, to make it very concise, that the board approve the plan, approve the application for plan approval with all the details as discussed, including the granting of the waiver. Discussion of the motion.
Yeah, that's including the changes we discussed tonight.
Yes. Hearing no further discussion of the motion, we'll call for a roll call vote. Justin,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
and Dave votes aye. Declare the motion carried unanimously. This decision is now complete and the board has approved it, and it will make its way through the remainder of the process as expeditiously as it can.
Yep.
And thank you to the applicant for putting this project together and being patient with us as a board. And we hope that this all moves forward expeditiously, or as expeditiously as it can under the circumstances.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, any other items which may lawfully come before the board? Hearing none, I don't think we are likely to need a vote to extend the duration of the meeting beyond 10 p.m.
I can still do it.
Just because we vote to extend doesn't mean we actually have to extend. We're just authorizing the meeting to continue.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. Motion is not debatable. All those in favor, Justin,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.